Oh, we're back, and we missed you so. Locked on Utah Hockey Club podcast. Tom Callahan, Robyn Leonio. It's been a while. I know, but we're back, and we have plenty to talk about. First preseason game for Utah HC, a successful one against the Blues, plus the first games at the Delta Center tonight, and we haven't even talked about Dylan Guenther and an 8-year extension yet. All that and more is coming up here in just a moment. Stay tuned to the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast.
You are Locked On Utah Hockey Club, your daily podcast on the Utah Hockey Club, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We appreciate you joining us here, Tom Callahan, Robyn Leonio. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. When it comes to the Utah Hockey Club, we are going to be the foremost authority for you on what's going on with this hockey team. We've got the knowledge base from years of covering Coyotes and now Utah HC. So looking forward to really kicking it into gear here and seeing the Utah HC in action for the first time. Sunday night, Robyn, they played a preseason game Monday, the first one coming up at the Delta Center against the Kings. But before we talk about that and actually getting on the ice, there was an absolutely massive contract signing for Utah HC. We heard rumblings first coming out of Elliot Friedman that there was an extension coming due, 8-year deal, but Dylan Guenther is signed. He's in, locked up. Your thoughts?
You know, I really love this deal. I was wondering when the first 8-year deal of the Bill Armstrong era would drop and who it would be. To no surprise, it ends up being one of the first guys he actually ends up, he drafts as an actual, in his full-time time as a GM. And I love it. I really love this. I have been high on Dylan Guenther this entire time. You have heard me, Tom, talk about Dylan Guenther and what the expectations I have for him this season. And I've been mentioning just how much I've loved seeing him grow over the last couple of years, whether it was that year where he spent a decent amount of his rookie year up in Arizona before going back to see the Seattle Thunderbirds in the WHL, getting a little bit of time in Tucson, and then finally getting the full-time slot with the Arizona Coyotes, now the Utah Hockey Club. I've loved his growth every minute of it. And to top it all off, as I've continued to talk time and time again, Tom, Dylan Guenther is the guy, truly the kind of guy you want on this team when you're looking for a guy who can score goals and score a lot of them.
I think that, one of the things that's interesting to me, Bill Armstrong talking about, the value of the contract. And of course, that's what all the teams are always looking for. Sometimes I almost feel like it might be a little dehumanizing because we're talking about this like we're, trying to find 20% off at Target or something. But,
yeah.
It really is a contract that I think with the cap finally going up again, the term is good. And the player is one that you absolutely want to have wrapped up for as long as possible. And so I think that getting an 8-year term on Gunther is awesome. And you and I talk about it. Were we going to see any bridge deals? Were we going to see any home run contracts? What were we going to see? We were trying to figure that out because now, even though you've had the Bill Armstrong era going on for a while, not with this ownership group. It's a different set of purse strings now. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I want to point out, this contract does not kick in until next year.
Right.
So it's still $900,000 and change on the cap hit for Gunther for this season. But we talked about Utah managing its cap space. Well, they had 9 and change going into this year. They will have next year now an additional $7 million to figure. Of course, some contracts come off the book. But just looking ahead, I like it. And I think a real signature piece for this team, wrapping up a young player who's part of the future. They really are beginning to cement what this team is going to be for the next 5-6 years. And I think that it's something Utah fans can get excited about.
Couldn't agree more, more with you on that one. Cause it's great, right? I absolutely love all of this. Though here's the thing I want to level some expectations for you all a little bit. for all the fans out there.
Don't do that. Don't
Look,
do that.
Look, the first couple years, I will say this. This is my opinion, right? This is my opinion. The first couple years of that contract, it might feel like a slight of an overpay because it's 8 years, a little over $7 million, I think, right?
Yes,
That's a lot. That's a
7.14.
lot for someone at his age who still has a little bit of development to go. I still think he's done a lot and has made great strides and he's going to be great. But he's still going through that slight bit of that last bit. So it might look like a overpay at first, but come towards the middle to end of that contract, it's going to be an incredibly friendly deal, especially, and as you mentioned, Tom, with the cap projected to continue to go up every year after this, it's only going to look better and better.
That's something I think fans do have to keep in mind is really when you determine whether it's a good contract or not, it's not in year 1 and year 2, it's in year 7 and year 8.
Yes.
And maybe you'll figure out by year 4 it's great or it's not. But honestly, you don't realize and recognize the full value of whatever the deal was for any player until you reach the end of it and you could say, yeah, that was good. Could have spent more, could have spent less, whatever the case may be. But again, I think that this is a good number. I think that it satisfies Dylan Guenther to be able to know that you are locked up for 8 years. You get the term, which, by the way, I don't know, some folks are new, may not know this. Only your team that has your rights can offer you an 8-year deal. So if you were to go out on the open market, you could only get a 7-year maximum deal. So that 8th year, the incentive to get the 8th year, the security of the deal, is given only to the club that owns your rights. So just want to point that out as well.
And that's as long as you have those rights, right?
Correct.
So if you're on an expiring year, let's say this year, you go to the expiring year for Dylan Guenther, and July 1st hits, you can only sign into a 7-year deal because you no longer have his rights.
So that's why you'll see, Robin, teams will trade for a guy at the draft to give them 3-4 days of negotiating window because now they own that player's rights. And if they sign that player before it gets to July 1st, they can offer an 8-year deal, whereas they couldn't before. So that's why that happens.
Exactly. So Dylan Guenther locked down for 8 years, and I feel like that's going to draw in all the excitement. They did it at the perfect time, Tom. I feel like they did it at the perfect time. Not that they're going to be there's any worry about drawing in as excitement already. This team is already so much buzz around this team. But I have a question for you. And again, there's a lot of question marks again still regarding jersey availability and everything like that. But here's a question for you, Tom. As rounding out the topic about Dylan Guenther, when Gunther's jersey does become available, how quickly now will those fly off the shelves?
Did we predict Dylan Guenther to be among the most popular sellers? I thought we picked Keller, right? We picked Keller, we picked Krause, obviously Spicy Tuna. The Shea Weber jerseys are going to go.
Of course.
I'm kidding. But Sergachev, and of course the goalies are always popular. Man, I don't know. I think maybe Gunther jumps into that pantheon of names now because at 7.14, Gunther is paid only slightly less than Keller at 7.15. So he is now the second highest paid forward on the team. Obviously, Sergachev's $8.5 million is the highest contract on the team, but second highest paid forward. And I think maybe there's a little bit of a reason that Keller at 7.15 is the bar, and so the 7.14, to me, that tells me exactly what they want out of Dylan Guenther. They want Clayton Keller numbers. They want 80 to 100 points. They want an offensive leader for years to come. The expectations have been set. The bar has been raised a lot. And that's why, Robin, to your point earlier about in year 1 and year 2, don't rush to judgment on this. But, I mean, at this point, okay, you put the pressure on this guy to go 50 to 60 to 70 to 80 points and escalate that game. And you know what? By year 2, year 3, you want to see, if not this year, you want to see the approach of a point per game pace as soon as possible.
You actually just reminded me, since you mentioned Keller's name too. I'm like, those that have been following the Coyotes for years know this, that when Keller was in his first year 2, maybe even slightly into year 3 of his contract, his big deal, everyone was like, oh my God, that's an overpay. He's not getting those numbers. He's not going to get those numbers. And I think, and then at some point he breaks his leg, comes back and has phenomenal year and has been great since.
Yes, absolutely. And so just give it some time, don't rush to judgment on it right away. But again, this contract doesn't even kick in this year. It's next year.
Yeah. And again, maybe that's the expectation, to have the production level from Gunther minus the broken leg part, because we don't,
we don't want that.
Nope.
We don't want
Nope. But I love it. I love everything about it. I feel like, and again, and as you know, Tom, I have been high on this kid for such a long time. Because it makes me super excited that the deal is now locked down for.
Yes, I agree. I'm glad to have it done. And you know what? Cheers to Dylan Guenther. Hope everything works out. Hope it's a great deal for a long time for both parties, and excited to have the contract wrapped.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to keep things going, though, Tom. We're going to keep talking on this episode of Locked On Utah Hockey Club. The first games finally coming upon us as the preseason has begun for the NHL season. Utah Hockey Club getting in some action. We're going to talk about that right after this. And today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks put their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get all the money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks. Run your game.
And today's show is also brought to you in part by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agreed Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Let's keep things rolling on this episode of Locked On Utah Hockey Club. Once again, Robyn Leano and Tom Callahan. I want to thank everyone for making the show your first listen. Free and available everywhere. For your second listen, feel sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They got a 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, so you can get all the sports you want constantly, nonstop, every single day. Let's get right back into it, Tom, because Utah Hockey Club action is finally here. We had previous weekend, there was a little bit of rookie action, which was great. Glad we got a chance to get that. But now, preseason games, actual, a lot more people getting dressed up, hitting the ice, finally happening this weekend.
This is always the exciting part. I get a little tingle talking about finally playing some games.
Mm-hmm.
I know they don't quote unquote mean anything in the standings, but
Yeah.
they mean something to everyone who dresses.
Yes.
And players trying to make the roster, rookies, veterans, they all have an agenda. They all have a reason they're out there and something they want to accomplish. We have expectations of them as members of the media. And so once we start playing these games, we get to see if our expectations are in line with the reality or not. So it's just fun. I think there's so many storylines for Utah this year that the preseason games are pretty important for a lot of different players and a lot of different reasons. So I can't wait to see how the schedule is going to continue to play out. Sunday night kicked off with St. Louis in a 5-3 win. It was an adventurous game, I will say that. And you know what? It had its ups and downs, it's back and forth. But hey, if you're a Utah fan, a win's a win. You feel pretty good about that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's essentially getting the first quote win of the, under this new franchise, getting all the fun with that out, and as much as you can, and you take every little thing, right? Again, even if it is preseason, as you said, doesn't really matter in in the grand scope of things. Like it's still it's still hockey. It's still there. It still counts. Why not have some fun with it?
And I tell you what, the St. Louis Blues social media people had some fun with Utah because they scored an own goal on themselves in the game on Sunday night. And it was during a delayed penalty with the net empty. There was a pass back off the boards that got away at the right point, went all the way down the ice and into the net. That counts because had that been touched by a St. Louis player, the whistle would have been blown. But because Utah did it, the puck rolls all the way down the ice into the empty net. Yeah, it's a goal, and that made it 2-0 at the time. So social media had some fun with Utah for that, but Utah obviously rallied. Here's a little tidbit, Robyn, little trivia, little history.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the first goaltender to score a goal in an NHL game?
Ooh, that's a good one. Because I know there's been a decent amount of goalie goals out there.
There has. So, to spare you the ragging your brain, it was actually the New York Islanders' Billy Smith. And Smith did not shoot the puck. But what happened Sunday night is exactly how Billy Smith ended up being credited with a goal. It was a delayed penalty. The other team, which I think was the Colorado Rockies, pulled their goaltender, made an errant pass, and it went all the way down the ice into the net. Well, the goal is credited to the last player to touch the puck. It turns out Billy Smith from the New York Islanders was the last player to touch the puck. And so he got credit for the goal, the first ever goaltender to score a goal in the NHL. The first goaltender to score on his own shot was Ron Hextall. So it's kind of a neat little trivia tidbit there. I thought I would throw that one out there.
I love that.
You don't get to drop that fact very often, so I thought I'd put it out there.
Of course. Yeah, no, I love that. That's actually really cool. So the more you know.
That's right. And I have a million of those things. I'm really good at trivia nights. If you need someone to come in with random stuff, I'm your guy. But so that happens. It goes to 2-0. It's not looking great for Utah at that point. The first period was a lot of special teams on Sunday night, a lot of power plays. Once we got settled in a little bit, I think the 5-on-5 play was there. But I will say this, couple things that I thought were important to take away. Number one, I thought Karel Vejmelka played much better than I thought he would. He didn't look rusty at all. I always expect goaltenders to be rusty. That's not a slight against him. I always expect goalies to be rusty. He went 19-20. Great. I thought that was fantastic. Mr. Contract, Dylan Guenther, played well, although he was a -2, but he was a force out there. He led the team in shots, had a goal on the game, was really just flying around out there, very excited. Obviously, I think maybe feeling a little bit of himself in that contract.
Of course.
Carcone scores twice. which is also awesome for this team. And he was a +2 on the evening. It got a little rough out there at times. And I thought Utah responded to St. Louis, who is traditionally a rough and tumble team. And I think that that's what Bill Armstrong is trying to build, is that resilience with this team. So I can applaud that. And I like that out of them. The other goaltender, Stauber, 5 of 6. So it wasn't tested a lot. In fact, Utah, despite the special teams disparity in the first period, I thought really controlled the pace of play. They outshot the Blues in the first 13-5. I thought they came out well, but in the second, St. Louis turned it around. They flipped the script. It was 15-5. And that's where Vejmelka, I thought, really it just stood on his head, played very well. So I really liked what I saw out of Utah, because there were points where they could have said, well, it's not going our way right now, or this isn't our thing. But they really responded to everything I thought St. Louis threw at them up and down the lineup. And, when you're trying to glue your lineup together here, especially on the defensive side, I think that was a lot of good things to see.
I mean, that's that's the most important thing about preseason, right? Is to kind of make sure that players are where you want them to be, and that kind of seeing, all right, how did you do this offseason? What were some of the things that you were doing? Are you rusty? What are things we can work on? Everything like that. And that's kind of what preseason is there for. And that's it's mainly there for the younger kids, see if they can make a crack at the opening night roster. But even the ones that have been there for a while, it's like, hey, let's get your feet back under you if you've only been practicing and need to get some actual game action in there. And especially for the case for a goaltender like Vejmelka, right? Because they need game action.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And what for a goaltender, and I speak from personal experience being a goaltender, you can't replicate a game in practice. The shots, the intensity, the scramble, just the way things work, you just can't. It's never that intensity in practice, even when you try to ratchet it up. So I think that to me is really, we talk about eyeball test. I thought tonight was a good eyeball test. And I really, again, 19 of 20 says a lot. That's a .950 save percentage. That's, if you're carrying that for any part of the season, you're winning a lot of hockey games.
Certainly. And again, those are other things to pay attention to. And again, we'll see as more games hit. We're gonna get another game today, and we're gonna talk about that, Tom. We're gonna talk about tonight's game as well. First game at the Delta Center that doesn't include the scrimmage that was the prospect scrimmage this past summer, because that was its own thing. But still, even though that was Utah Hockey Club action, this is the first time we're actually seeing the team together as a whole unit against another team at the Delta Center. We're going to talk about that right after this. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get in a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and do so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's on FanDuel.com. Be sure to check it out, guys. I really love FanDuel. I do a lot of sports betting on FanDuel. Getting out, talking, making my bets on my 49ers or on any other team, seeing what I can do. Once again, $200 in bonus bets. A really good deal here when you place your first $5 bet. So once again, that is on FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's get things wrapped up on this episode, Tom. Utah Hockey Club getting in their first game at the Delta Center. It's a preseason game, as we talked about before, but it's still the first game at the Delta Center nonetheless.
I think that, the excitement level is going to be huge. For fans coming into the building, seeing it, touching it, smelling it, just what the ice smells like, what the building feels like when it's that cold. Because if you used to go in there for basketball, it's different. It's just a whole different ball of wax. And man, it's exciting. It's a lot of fun. There's a vibe and a buzz that is unique. to hockey. I know that folks are, used to the sporting events in Utah. Obviously, you've got, Utah and all the college sports there. And of course, the ECHL team and the Jazz. And it's a good sports town.
Yeah.
This is just going to be different. And I hope you're able to get there and experience it. It's going to be an awful lot of fun. And looking forward to it. I think that, you know what, the Kings are going to be another good test because the Kings are a team that I have a lot of questions about. What are they really going to be this year? Are they going to be in the playoffs, out of the playoffs? Are they going to figure out that they can put things back together and make a run or not? And again, I know it's early, it's preseason, but there's a lot of players that need to find out if they can fit in and be pieces to the puzzle on both sides of this equation. So it's important. It's an important game. And look, you're lying to yourself if you don't think those Utah Hockey Club players want to win that first game in their own building.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There will be that. There will be the drive. There will be the buzz. There's like the amount of excitement that's gonna be not just in the building, but around downtown Salt Lake City tonight, Tom, is going to be electric.
Yes, it absolutely is. And, Robyn, we're going to get to see how much merch exactly is out there. That's one of the things that we've been talking about. Just trying to get merch into the hands of people. It's been selling out regularly.
Oh, I know. It's absolutely crazy. And people have been always continuing to ask, hey, what about the jerseys? When are the jerseys coming available? We did hear, by the way, I do want to mention this really quick. Some might be available as early as November, but only a select couple of players. So we'll see how that goes.
I also have a feeling that if you are a season ticket holder, you probably
get priority access to.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. I have no doubt that will be the case. And everyone's waiting for that. I know that. Everyone wants to get their hands on a jersey, especially if you can also get your hands on the inaugural season patch, which will come separate from my understanding. Is they won't be on, if you inaugural season patch won't come on moment of the jersey sold. You can get one, you just have to put it on yourself.
Or have somebody do it for you. A lot of what they do now, I don't know if you've seen it, but when they customize jerseys at arenas, a lot of time they do heat pressing of stuff on there. It's not as stitched as much anymore. So they might be able to heat press you a patch on the shoulder for the inaugural season.
Just like how I'm going to go put a Seacrest on my jersey when I get mine this year.
You're going to put Ryan Seacrest on your jersey? Why? As Robyn sips thoughtfully, and really, if you're listening to this show, you can't see the look I got, but trust me, it was there. You said you were going to put a Seacrest on your jersey. I just assumed it was Ryan. Anyway, okay, moving on.
Anyways, for first game of the doubleton again against the Los Angeles Kings, who the two organizations have, like, if you use any of what the Coyotes history has had, there was always a little bit of a rivalry with Los Angeles. It was there, not a whole lot, but it was there. Mainly it was with the fans. So I'm curious to see how it's going to work with Utah, and see if there's going to be a little bit of hate. It could be. People tend to always hate LA teams, no matter what.
Phoenix, the sporting events I've been to, even if they're not playing LA teams, at some point the beat LA chant comes up. So I don't know if it's quite the same for Salt Lake, if there's that much of a give a darn about beating Los Angeles. I can tell you it was almost a big brother, little brother feeling in Phoenix. Yeah. So some of that might carry over.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Like, let's say if you are a Jazz fan and would do that anytime the Lakers would come to town, or are a RSL fan anytime the Galaxy would come to town, let me know if you guys just put the beat LA out there because or
LAFC. The LAFC is exploded, and
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, that's right. I totally forgot about the LAFC because I grew up hating the Galaxy because that was always the team that my hometown team had always hated. But
that's fair.
No, it's the first one that came to mind.
It kind of, and I kind of had to do a double take when you were talking about my 49ers earlier. Bay Area, but because the Raiders. Where are they now? Vegas? Are we sure? Are they going to be there? I don't know. That's but anyway, I think the vibe will be there. And here's the other reason why you want to beat LA is because they're a playoff team. So I think if I'm looking at the ins and the outs, do I see a world, Robyn, where there could be 5 teams making it out of the Central into the playoffs? Yes, absolutely. Is Utah one of them? I'll say it again. To me, they have to overachieve. Yeah. But if you're able to take LA and make them a question mark, Vancouver is a question mark. Which team are they? The beginning of last year or the end of last year? So if Vancouver proves that they are a strong team that will win the division again or challenges for it against Edmonton, okay, let's say those 2 teams separate themselves. But now we've got 6 other teams that we're wondering what's going to happen. Vegas was last year just a down year, or is it a trend? They got into the wild card. They kind of got in by the skin of their teeth, but they made it. And I expect Vegas to be better this year. So where does LA go? Do they slide to 4th? Do they slide out? Anaheim, San Jose, LA, everybody in California pretty much. What are they going to be? And so those are the questions that I have for that Pacific Division. Calgary's going to be awful. So, I don't think you have to worry about them. Sharks are going to be awful. Ducks are going to be awful. So Kings are a question mark. What are they going to be? And they have to prove it. And I think that leaves you Vancouver, Edmonton, the Kings, and Vegas as the 4 teams that could make the playoffs in that division. But is LA going to be good enough?
Yeah, that's true. You're right. I mean, I've talked about multiple times with the crossovers I've had already. When I've talked to other hosts, there seems to be a consensus among the Central Division that our division is better by a significant amount, by a pretty good chunk.
Well, I mean, look at Nashville got so much better this year. The Wild are in cap hell, but that's only for this year. Chicago is probably the bottom of the barrel this year, but I think Utah is a team on the rise. I think Dallas is a playoff team. I think Nashville is probably the division winner. Colorado is probably better than they showed last year. They dealt with a lot of injuries and they had some issues. So those top 3 teams right there. And then St. Louis. Is St. Louis in or out of the playoffs this year? St. Louis was close last season.
And let's not forget about Winnipeg, who's always putting in the battle out there.
Winnipeg, fewest goals allowed last year. Everybody forgets about that. Connor Hellebuck and that Jets defense were the best in the NHL last year. Jennings Trophy winners. How do you ignore that? So yeah, Central's tough.
It's an incredibly tough division, and I think that's kind of why you and I are kind of in agreement that Utah has to overperform like significantly in my mind to make the playoffs. But they're still going to be I think they're going to finish like 6th. At the end at the end of it all, 6th in the division. But you know what? That's not bad.
Well, I'm not even worried about where they finish in the division. I'm worried about where they finish overall in the conference. That's what I'm looking at this year. So, and I said it before, but if you missed the show, just very quickly, to me, Utah's got to be in the 10 or 11 spot by the time this year's done. If they overachieve, they could be in the 9. And if they really overachieve and they have a hell of a year and everything comes together much faster than it should, they'll end up in the 8th spot. They could be the 5th team, the 5th team in the Central Division that makes the playoffs. As the extra wild card, they'd be the swing team. Now, that's not my expectation, but I want to see them in that 10-11 spot. I want to see them climb 10, maybe 12 points. I want to see them improve by a half goal a game. I want to see them reduce a half goal a game defensively. If they make those improvements, they could pick up a goal a game, which is a lot. That's a lot I'm asking, and I know that. But if they can do it, that to me is 10 or 12 extra points. That gets them closer to the conversation. 77 last year. Can they get to 87? Can they get to 90 this year? I don't know. It's a tough division. But that's what I want to see for the improvement.
And we definitely have to see. And again, we'll do a lot of the breakdown the closer the season we get. We'll do a divisional breakdown. We'll do a conference breakdown. Heck, we can.
I'm just going to have a breakdown. Period. I'm just going to start sobbing uncontrollably.
Mood.
Yeah.
Heavy mood right there. Anyways, to close things off on this episode, Tom, let's get to some predictions for tonight's game against the LA Kings at the Delta Center. Let's do this. Let's see. I want to get maybe like a possible score prediction and who will be your predicted standout player.
Okay, so I think once again we're going to see the over-under. I think 8 goals on Sunday night. So I think the over-under is probably going to be pretty close to that in preseason hockey. So 7.5 to me is a good line. And I think we may see the over. The Kings, one of the questions they have is goaltending, just like I think with Utah. Now it depends. It depends who's actually going to end up playing a full game, who's going to see a little bit of a look, who's going to see a lot of a look. I expect Connor Ingram is going to get as much work as Vejmelka because they're obviously the 1-2. And then you're going to see some of the kids get in there and play a period here and there. You never know who's going to have a bad period, right? So
Right.
That one's a little tough for me. But I will say this. I loved the energy and the spunk that Dylan Guenther was playing with tonight. I really appreciated that out of him. One guy I want to point out, Carcone, we talked about 2 goals, 5 shots. But you know what? How about a shout out to Ben McCartney for 2 assists on the evening in the game, which I thought was fantastic. And he was also a +2. So good for him. I think if Sergachev is going to be in the lineup tonight, he is the guy that I'm circling as this is my player to watch, and I think he's going to make an impact. All
right, let's get a score prediction from you.
I'm going to go, you know what? I think it's going to be another high-scoring affair. I'm going to go 5-4 Utah.
5-4 Utah. I like it. I'm thinking in my head it's going to be a little bit less, but it's going to be still a close game.
Okay.
I am literally just going down, one level on you in a 4-3 Utah win.
Okay. So you're expecting a little bit more defense and goaltending and a little bit less mistakes that end up in the back of your net. That's fair.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about that. And again, I'm curious to see how this blue line, what the blue line makes up. There's going to be a lot of shifting around the blue line. As necessary too, right? We got almost a completely new blue line. There are some returners, but there's going to be a new blue line.
Yeah, you know what? It was good to see. So Kesselring, Bortuzzo were out there. Connaughton was out there trying to, stir the pot a little bit as well. So good to see some of the vets get out there. And that's why I think you'll probably see those guys, or at least 2 out of the 3 rotate out. You'll rotate some other players in. Especially when you're starting, not that it was on the road, but on the road in Des Moines. Yeah. Now that you're back home, I think you're going to see the big names in for this first game. I expect to see, not only, the guys we were talking about earlier, but also, the Kellers, Schmaltzes, Krauses, if they're ready to go, if they want to play. And that's the other thing, too, is I think coaches now, it never used to be this way. You kind of got forced into preseason games. But now I feel like a lot of coaches are very mindful of players. Yep. I know that Nick Bukestad is still battling that upper body injury, considered week to week. So probably not going to see him. Marino, upper body right now. So, we'll see if those guys are not going to dress, not going to really be pushed. So that's fair.
I'm excited to see the growth of Logan Cooley.
Yeah.
See how he looks in you too.
Yeah, that's your boy right there. I know you were excited for Cooley coming into this year. And you know what? I'm excited to get my first look at maybe like a guy like Stenlund, see what he's going to look like. And then I'm really curious to know, where do Keller, Schmaltz, and Krause hit on the ice? Like, do they hit the ground running? Do they need to warm it up a little bit, kind of get it in gear? I want to see where these guys are.
Yeah. That's a line I trust, but you're right. Sometimes it might take a little bit because, again, they had a whole off season, and now they're on a new sheet of ice. Completely different place. We'll see how it turns out. But we're out of time on this episode of the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. If you like what you guys heard, don't forget to leave a review. Give us a like. Leave a comment. Subscribe if you've yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your shows, including on YouTube. We're on Sirius XM. If you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you can listen to us ad-free on Amazon Music. Don't forget to interact with us on social media. We're on X, Threads, and Instagram at LO_NHL Utah. I'm personally at Robyn_Leonio, and Tom Callahan is at Callahan on air. Don't forget to also join our Insider Text Club. Send us a text to 801-760-9033. That's 801-760-9033. You'll be able to text us one-on-one. Every now and then I'll do like an Ask Me Anything session, or just a session where you can text me one-on-one, and I'll answer your questions during that session. We have mailbags coming out this season. We're going to have exclusive content as these games start rolling through. Get a lot of those exclusive game notes. Best place to be is on this text club, so be sure to get started and join us now on that. But once again, thanks to everyone for listening on this episode, and we're getting back to our regularly scheduled shows pretty shortly, so be sure to stay tuned 5 days a week, once again, right here on the Locked On Utah Hockey Club podcast. We'll see you guys next time.